Hello tubers, this is Kurt with Edibles and Exotics coming to you from sunny Mesa, Arizona. And today I'm going to do a little video on how to grow avocado. So behind me right here is a bunch of different types of avocados. So there are West Indies avocados, Mexican avocados, and Guatemalan avocados mixed in there. So I think the mixture is, there's a Hass, regular grocery store Hass, or maybe a couple of those. There's an Avozilla. There is a red avocado, there's a long neck avocado, a Marcus pumpkin, a Florida giant, I think that's what they call it, and one other that I just can't remember. But in the previous video, I've actually sprayed my sunblock that I make. It's a natural, non-toxic sunblock for tropicals that are sun sensitive, and the reason I spray that on there is it's not so much needed now. I kind of did it for the video, but when temperatures start getting up around, I would say upper 90s, lower 100s, they really start to cook. The leaves just can't deal with the heat, the sun, and the drying winds all mixed in together. So the leaves will actually start to crisp up. So if you look at some of these leaves, these tips were burned last year, okay? Some of them up top got a little burnt up here from frost, but these down here are from last year. And usually what I do in the summer, when it starts getting really hot, I will actually plant sweet potatoes along the side here, all right? And then I'll put a metal, like chicken wire kind of arbor over the top, kind of almost like a dome shape, all right? And I let the sweet potatoes grow over that. What that does is it gives me living shade, all right? It allows some light through, and it allows the avocado to survive the summer until it gets a little older and it doesn't need that anymore. And it's also an indicator plant. So you're probably sitting there like, what the heck is an indicator plant? All right, an indicator plant is going to be almost like a sacrificial plant. So you're going to grow that sweet potato vine up and over your avocado. They can take full sun here, no problem, right? And they can take the heat. They can take pretty much anything that Arizona can throw at it, as long as they have water, all right? So by indicator, what I mean by that is your sweet potato vines are going to start to wilt long before your avocado that's underneath the vine and all those leaves in the shade is going to start to wilt, all right? It's also going to, as it grows, it's going to provide a microclimate for your avocado tree. So all those sweet potato leaves transpiring and your avocado leaves transpiring are going to create a little microclimate because the humidity gets trapped inside, okay? And avocados do love humidity. So this is just to nurse it through the first couple of years, all right? Now, you could buy grafted avocados from nurseries or Lowe's or Home Depot or even Walmart, or you can order them online. But you got to keep in mind, a grafted avocado, all right? You don't know who grew it. You don't know the root stock it's on. You don't know how it was grown. And by the time it gets to you, it could have been grown in a greenhouse, and it gets to you, you put it outside, now it's in a completely different environment, right? It's got wind moving past it, it's got less humidity, the temperatures are different, so it might not grow that fast, okay? It might suffer, you might lose the top, the graft could break, there's a whole bunch of issues with it. If you want to go that route and get instant fruit, that's fine, but just keep in mind, even though it fruits, depending on the size of it, that fruit may not get big. It may drop its fruit. The fruit may be all seed. You don't know. So I always grow my avocados from seed, okay? Avocados are not true to type. So if you plant a grocery store Hass avocado, when that tree grows and in a couple of years starts producing fruit, it may be pretty similar to a Hass avocado. It may be exactly like it. It may be better. It may be all skin and all seed and very little edible pulp. It's just kind of, a a toss-up. You just never know. It could be the best, latest, and greatest variety of avocado. But like I said, I got a bunch of different avocados growing here. So I said, you know, I had a Marcus pumpkin. That was a Marcus pumpkin seed, but it's not going to grow a Marcus pumpkin avocado. It's going to be, more than likely, it's going to be pretty close. Okay. But, you know, there's been experiments done where people have planted 100+ seeds from the same tree. And I think it was a Haas. And those seeds, when they sprouted and finally grew avocados years later, they were totally different. Some of them had long, skinny necks, kind of teardrop shaped. Some had big fruit, some had little fruit, some had big seeds. So you never really know what you're going to get. Kind of a cool toss-up, right? Now, they say there's type A and type B avocado. So a Haas is one, a Fuerte is another. And they say the flowers, the male flowers and the female flowers open up at different times. So it's good to have both planted. So when the bees come in and pollinate, you're going to get cross-pollination and more fruit. You know, I'm not too sure how beneficial that's going to be for you. I do have mixtures of both types in here. But you got to think of it this way. If a bee comes in the morning, let's say, and collects pollen, then it comes back in the afternoon and it's looking for more and it flies into one of your female flowers, it's still got that pollen on it. It's still more than likely viable. It's still probably going to pollinate it. So I really wouldn't worry too much about that. I've read a lot online and people say it helps, but it's not really necessary. So back to the particular tree we're looking at here. Like I said, there's multiple different varieties in here. And the way I grow these, all right, people think there's some sort of crazy myth or, you know, you're some sort of magician or something, or you know something that other people don't to grow them here. They grow here fine. You just got to understand that they are understory trees in their native habitat, meaning they grow under a canopy of other trees. So they're mostly in the shade, all right? These guys, the leaves are very sun sensitive because they're trying to grab as much light as they can because they're usually growing in pretty shady areas, okay? The bark is green underneath. You see that? Okay? So the reason the bark is green is because they're trying to photosynthesize through their stem, because where they grow naturally, they're not getting that much light and they need the most photosynthesis they can get to grow fast and big, all right? They usually don't have too many leaves. As you can see, a lot of these stems, you know, there's maybe, I don't know, maybe like 3-4 inches between leaf sets, you know, and you got this big chunk of stem. And the reason why I grow a bunch of these together, all right, is because if you grow one, you get a long, skinny stem, okay? And there's not too many leaves. You usually have to spray something on the leaves like this. You got to coat the stems with trunk paint, like white reflective trunk paint in the summer. In the winter, they usually do okay, but we're talking summer here when the weather's brutal. But by growing them together like this, you could see there's a huge mass of leaves in here, right? So there's some spots where you could see stem popping through, but you could actually just take these and kind of shove them inside and bury them, so now it's shaded, right? So if your leaves burn, that's not a good thing, but it's not going to kill the plant because it can grow new leaves. But if your stems burn, that stem is going to be cooked, all right, from wherever that burn is all the way up. And usually when they burn like that, they start to rot. So not only does it die up, but it also dies down. You know, you can clip it off and now you just clipped off, let's say, maybe a whole year's worth of growth and you get to start all over. So I grow a bunch of these together. And I do it's a bonsai technique, but it actually happens in nature too. It's called inoculation. All right, that is when two tree trunks, no, get out of here. Okay, so that's when two tree trunks touch, all right? And they press so hard against each other, or they rub together, and then they stop rubbing, and you rub the cambium layers off, or the cambium was smushed so tightly into each other that they actually fuse together. So there's plenty of examples in nature. You can Google inoculation, and you'll see plenty of pictures of that people have taken in the woods where two trees either same species or very similar, have touched and the trunks have fused together, and you have two tree trunks growing into the ground and two tree trunks growing up, but in the middle they're connected. And sometimes they're so close together that they fuse together and it turns into what looks like one tree, but it's actually two trees. So by inoculating these guys together, you can see I got nice thick canopy in there, all right? And when you do that, you're joining the cambium layers together, so you have more roots supplying all those stems. All right, so if let's say one stem needs a little more nutrients that this stem has, well, they could share. You know, they could share back and forth. So it'll actually help them to grow better, and you're going to have a thicker trunk on it too at the base. So I'm going to get you in a few minutes and do a little close up and show you exactly what I did. All I did was just knock some of the cambium layer off, and I touched all the trunks together where that cambium was knocked off. And then I just tied paracord around it, and I'm going to let it sit like that for about 2 years. You know, when I remove the paracord, those trunks are going to be fused together. So below that fusion, we're going to have a bunch of little trunks coming up out of the ground. Then you're going to have the fusion where all the trunks were fused together via inoculation, and then above that, they're going to branch back out. That pretty much covers my idea with top growth on the avocados. Below ground, everyone thinks, you know, oh, you live in Arizona, the soil's too alkaline, there's too much clay, there's not enough nutrients in the soil, and blah, blah, blah. And, you know, I don't recommend planting an avocado in an area that's like crushed rock or just dead soil, meaning no topsoil, clay, rocky, stuff like that. So what I do with my avocados, and I got a couple throughout the yard, I'll show you all of them. With this one in particular, what I did was I dug down 2 feet, okay? Pulled all the dirt out of that hole. It was about 2 feet by 2 feet. Square hole, not round, okay? Square. And when I removed that dirt, I put probably about 6 inches or so of wood chips on the bottom. And then I flushed it out with gypsum, all right? So basically gypsum is what you would get if you ground up sheetrock. It's garden gypsum. You can get it at the store. It's dirt cheap. I think it's like, I don't know, 20-pound bags, like maybe $5 or something. So you put some gypsum in the bottom of the hole. You don't have to do it with the wood chips in there. That's just how I did it. But anyway, you sprinkle it in the bottom of the hole, probably about 1/4 inch, 1/2 inch thick layer. And then you fill the hole up with water and you let it sit and it'll start to drain out. And what that does is it turns the clay particles, our natural clay soil, the clay particles, it turns those from a floury consistency to a more clumpy consistency, so they stick together, and it washes any residue of salt out of there. And Arizona being, the valley used to be at the bottom of the ocean dried up, left salt deposits. We get not a lot of rain, and when we do get rain, usually it sits on the surface, soaks in a little bit, evaporates, leaves more salts, okay? So we just got a lot of salt buildup, so that flushes the salts out, all right? But when I say salt, I don't mean table salt. I'm talking minerals, all right? So you want to flush that out, because avocados, they are a little sensitive to high mineral content like that. What happens is if the ground is too quote-unquote salty, the water is going to want to travel out of your avocado and into the more saline area, okay? So if you get rid of that salt, the avocado has an easier time drinking water, so to speak, out of the soil, okay? The water is going to want to travel into the avocado plant and not out of the avocado plant into the roots, or into the soil. So after you fill that hole up with water, with your gypsum in there, you let it drain out, okay? And then you're going to let it sit for, you know, a couple hours or whatever, and then you're going to fill it up again. And those gypsum particles, they're going to latch on to all that salt and everything, and they're going to go down deeper into the soil. And you're going to do that a couple times. You know, you can do it 2, 3 times, whatever. And then, so now we're left with our hole, right? Square hole, gypsum flushed through it, watered, it's nice and soft, wood chips at the bottom. So usually what I use, just because it's cheap, I use El Toro brand composted cow poop. Okay, it's dirt cheap. It's composted. It's got wood chips mixed in it, so it's a good ratio of nitrogen to carbon. Helps break down pretty quick. And what I'll do is I'll put a little bit of that, probably about 6 inches in the hole. Then I'll put 6 inches of the clay soil that I removed from the hole back in on top of that. And I just keep layering it, all right? So it's kind of like a mini hugel mound. And once I get that all layered up, then I'll get a pitchfork and I'll mix it up a little bit, not touching the wood chips at the bottom, just the clay and the cow poop. I mix that up really good. And what I'm left with is a mound, because I've added wood chips and I've added composted cow poop to the hole. So it's now mounded up a little bit, all right? So at that point, I punch out my hole in the top. You know, I kind of push it down and I make my hole where I'm going to plant my avocado. And I usually plant them from a pot. If you're not doing a pot, you can just plop the seed right in there. Make sure you orient it the right way up. And then I cover, so if I got my seed in there or my pot, right, my plant out of a pot, or I'll take my whole grow bag and stick it in there. You can do that with grow bags. You don't have to take them off. And then I'll do a 6-inch layer of composted cow poop on top of that, right? And I'll pack it down a little bit. Not tight, I'm not jumping on, just pushing it down a little bit, all right? Then I water it in really good, all right? And then I'll add 6 inches to a foot deep of mulch, all right? Wood chip, arborist wood chip mulch. You can do bagged, but usually they're treated with chemicals so they don't rot, which you want them to rot, okay? So arborist wood chip mulch, if you can get it, if you got a chipper shredder, you can shred some whatever, green, you know, brown, just layer it on top. But I'd recommend 6 inches to a foot. If you're growing from a seed, you plant that seed in there. If you cover it with wood chips, it may not grow through. So I wouldn't do more than an inch or two thick of wood chips above the seed, because it's going to put out a stalk. And if that stalk doesn't hit sunlight soon enough, it's probably going to die, okay? That's all I do. That's it. If you want, you can sprinkle some elemental sulfur on top of that, and that'll help acidify it a little bit more. But I guarantee you, if you grow them like that, you're not going to have a problem. If you grow them together like I do, it'll help immensely. If you watch my other video on how to make sunblock for plants and you spray that on there, that's going to help immensely. If you follow my recommendation when it's young and you grow sweet potatoes around it and put a metal cage over the top so they can grow over it and shield it, that's going to help immensely. If you do that, one thing I forgot to mention, the sun goes this way here, okay? So that's east, that's west, that's south, that's north, all right? So in the summer, the sun is a little bit more north than overhead, directly overhead, so it's a little bit north, and it goes this way. So when you grow this, you want to make sure you're far enough out one way or the other in the summer and oriented right, because you don't want midday sun shining right in on your avocado, okay? A little bit of sun's okay, but you know, you want to kind of shade the top, because these top leaves are the most tender. These could probably take a little bit more sun, especially if you put some sunblock for plants on them. All right, so now I'm going to get you down here. I'm going to show you, I have this avocado tree in the ground. I got one behind it that I think my buddy George wants. Did the permaculture, how to start a food forest in your yard video, and we're going to be doing another one. We're going to be filming this Sunday. When this video posts, we're going to be down in Tucson at the Swales filming a video on permaculture down there, and hopefully we'll get that up in another week or two after we get it edited. But he's going to take this one back here in the pot, and he's going to plant it in the ground, and he's going to follow exactly how I do it, because he sees the kind of success. By the way, this plant is only 1 year old. Last summer was its first summer. It survived out here, no frost protection in the winter. The leaves on the top got a little burnt, but all of these are all new. They're growing, they're healthy, no problem. There's a couple in here that got burnt that you can still see, but most of them disappeared. So they are not super frost sensitive. If you get down into I would say probably the mid to low 20s for an extended period of time, they probably will freeze. So you might want to throw a blanket over them, and or maybe a heater pointed at them or something like that. I use heat lamps for like chickens or reptiles or something like that. I just put it under the plant and kind of aim it up, and usually put some sort of blanket over the top, but leave the light out here so it can stay cool and not light on fire. But usually that's enough heat to keep it from freezing and dying. So let me get you down here and we'll show you the emasculation on the trunks on this one and also the one in the pot for George, and then I'll show you some of the other avocados that I have planted in my hugel mounds. All right, so this is the one that is in the ground. This is the base. You can see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and there's a couple more popping up. I think these are just Haas avocados that I threw in there. I think this one's the Avozilla. I don't remember which one's which. I had them all labeled, but oh, there's another one back here. So you can see they are starting to get bark, all right? You can see that right there. There's remnants of one of the seeds still kind of hanging on. This guy's starting to get bark. Here's another one. So like I said, that's just a lot of mulch in there. I compost in place, so whenever I have kitchen scraps, like you can see there's a lime here. It's from either my mother or from the neighbor. I don't remember which, but that's a lime that's just going to sit there and break down and feed this plant. But I put all sorts of kitchen scraps in here, and this mulch, it disappears pretty quick, guys. So, you know, in I don't know, if you did about a foot, let's say, I've noticed that it goes down to about 2 to 3 inches in about 9 months. So it disappears quick, guys. Here's the other one that I've done for George. You can see, here's the paracord where it's emasculated, all right? Here's a whole bunch of trunks. So this guy not only grew out, but it grew multiple trunks out of each seed, which is kind of cool, all right? This one, it doesn't look as healthy because it's in a grow bag. It's not in the ground. These guys have a taproot type system. I don't think it's a true taproot, but they do have roots that go deep. So they don't really like pots. So here's another avocado right here. This one was surrounded by these eggplants here and some tree collards. And then what's left of last year's tomato plants, but there was a wall of tomato plants mostly around this guy. So last summer he didn't get much sun, he didn't grow that much, but this year he's starting to put on some new leaves. You can see there's a new branch right there, and he's getting shaded up here by this giant Pakistani. So I'm trying to grow over the hugel mound because I usually cover this with a 7 by 14 foot umbrella, but I'm trying to avoid that this year. I'm trying to just use living shade. So there's one. Here's another one over here. This is in another hugel mound. He's doing pretty good. This guy, same deal. I'm trying to grow this mulberry here over the top to shade him. All right, and then we got this Brunswick fig over here. Hopefully he fills out and shades him too, and then shades my golden African rhino horn banana over here. And also my tree collards that have praying mantises all over them, because the wife and daughter bought a bunch of praying mantises. So guys, I did have another avocado, and he's right here. This is, again, another Florida giant avocado. And this guy, he is in almost complete shade. All right. We got these giant tree collards with like 3 foot. Some of these leaves are gigantic on here. And he's not getting any sun. So he needs sun. This is the time of year, you know, winter, spring, fall. It's when they want full sun. Okay. This guy's not getting any, and he's not growing. So probably going to die. I don't know. I might dig it up, pull it out, but just goes to show you they do need sun when it's not blazing hot out. When it's blazing hot, this guy would be fine in the shade, but not now. The last thing I want to talk about is probably one of the most important things, and that would be water. So if you plant it according to how I described with the mulch and digging the hole and all that, basically what you're going to need to do is maintain a constant moisture level. So that moisture level, it's going to change. It's going to be a higher requirement of moisture in the summer and lower in the winter. So obviously when the plant's hot, you know, the above the ground, I mean, because of the weather, sun shining on it or whatever, it's going to be transpiring more. So basically akin to a human sweating. And it's going to draw moisture out of the ground, and it could actually dry out the soil around the root zone pretty quick just by doing that. So your soil around it may be moist, but the soil that's in close proximity to the roots may not be. So you're going to want to maintain a constant moisture level, okay? That moisture level is going to change depending on how well your soil drains and how much the plant is transpiring. So if you have very poorly draining soil, it's going to hold on to that moisture a lot better than if you have really good draining soil. So here in the valley, if you grow it the way I say to grow it, or my method, so to speak, you shouldn't really have an issue with drainage so much. It should drain pretty good. So in the winter, it's heavily mulched. You got good soil in the hole and everything, and you got the wood chips at the bottom, or logs, or whatever you're going to do for your makeshift hugel mound. So I know a lot of people, quote-unquote experts, say, you want to let the soil dry out an inch, 2 inches, 3 inches before watering. You want to water deep. That's just nonsense. So you want to maintain a soil moisture level, all right? So depending on the plant, that's going to change depending on the temperature and all that, the drainage of your soil. But for avocados in general, you want to aim for pretty moist in the summer and less moist in the winter, because they're just not transpiring as much as in the winter. So people always ask me, well, how do I know how often to water? Okay, what I recommend is watering more often, but using less water. Okay, that way you maintain that moisture level. And you don't want to use drip irrigation, right? Because that's just wasting water. People think it's a money-saving, great way to water. It's not, okay? Especially not for tropicals. Even for native plants here in the desert, drip is just awful, okay? What you're doing is, with drip, you're putting spots around your plants or trees or whatever, and all it's going to do is make a little puddle, depending on how long you run it, how high of a volume you're running it. It's going to make a little puddle on the surface, and it's going to form kind of almost like a cone-shaped moisture area underground. So if you have a 4-foot diameter drip line, all right, so your canopy stretches in 4 feet, in a diameter, so 2 feet in either direction from the trunk of the tree. Most people recommend to put in 4 drip emitters. Okay, so you have 2 feet, let's say, between each of those drip emitters if you drew a straight line, and in between those 2 feet, you just got dry soil. Okay, even if it's mulched, it's probably not going to spread out under that mulch very much. So you're watering in those little spots. Those roots are going to concentrate in there. All the dry spots, they're probably not going to grow into. So you're sacrificing real estate for your plants to suck up nutrients, water, and actually anchor the tree or plant in the ground. So what I recommend is, if you're going to do a drip line, use micro emitters, sprayers, okay? And you want to coat that whole ground, right? So you get your wood chips there, 6 inches to a foot of wood chips. You want those to stay moist, all right? Plants have feeder roots, okay? Most of the nutrients that your plant is going to get is going to be in the topsoil. So depending on the variety of plant and the type of soil you have, it could be anywhere from a few inches down to maybe a foot or two. All right, the roots below that are mainly there just to anchor the plant. So if you pull a plant out of the ground, let's just say, for instance, a taproot type plant, you're going to see a whole bunch of little hair roots towards the surface of the soil. And as you get deeper, all you're going to have is maybe one little taproot or big taproot, and maybe like 2 or 3 little ones coming off the side. They're not going to be fine hair roots, okay? So those deep roots, their main job is to anchor the plant, all right? They're not there to get nutrients because there's very little micros, so N, P, and K, down that deep, all right? And another problem with drip emitters is you're watering your plant, and besides not maintaining a proper moisture level at the top, where your feeder roots are, your fine hair roots, and all your soil life, you're watering, you're probably putting down a lot of water, and that water is going to eventually get pulled down by gravity below your root zone, okay? So you're just wasting water. Your plant's not going to absorb that. Most of the roots are going to be in the top couple of feet of soil. Once you get below that, it doesn't matter what you have. Those roots down there, if there are any, are not really doing much of anything when it comes to absorbing nutrients and absorbing water, okay? Another thing, like I just mentioned, was the soil life. So we're trying to build soil life here, okay? We're trying to feed our plants mainly organically, just because it works the best, not because I'm against chemicals, but it works the best that way. You know, you got your mycorrhiza in there, which is almost like a secondary root system. And by using drip emitters, you know, you're not keeping that top layer of soil moist. And a lot of times, you know, either your soil microbes are going to die or they're going to migrate to the spots where there is moisture, and they're going to stay there. So a lot of your mulch is not going to get chewed up. A lot of it's not going to get broken down, and then it's not going to turn into fertilizer for your plants. So by using the micro sprayers, you're going to drench that whole area of mulch or compost or whatever you got on top of your plant, protecting the soil and feeding the life. And by keeping it moist, you're not flushing those nutrients out of the soil either. So when you water with drip emitters, you're usually watering for long periods of time, very slow rate, and that water is just washing away your nutrients that your plant would otherwise absorb. It's washing it down to where their anchoring roots are and away from where the feeder roots are. So another problem with drip emitters is you're going to wind up with salt buildup too. All right, people think you know, you soak the ground and it's going to miraculously wash away minerals that build up over time. Well, when you use drip emitters like that, you're basically letting the soil dry out in between, and when that soil dries out, that's when the minerals come out of solution and start bonding to the let's say in our area, the clay soil particles. Okay, once they bond, it's very hard to knock that bond loose and knock the soil out, even by flooding it. When you use micro sprayers with mulch, that moisture never evaporates. So your salts that are in solution are going to stay in solution. They're not going to dry and bind to the clay particles. Okay, so you're never going to wind up having that salt buildup, and your nutrients are going to stay close to the surface of the soil because you're not constantly flushing them away. Basically, if you follow my methods of watering, like I said, you're just trying to maintain a moisture level. More moisture in the summer, less moisture in the winter. You don't want it drying out. You're not going to water and then stick your finger in or this or that to wait and see how dry the soil is. And no, you just want to figure out what the proper moisture level is and go with it. I hope that kind of sums up the watering issue for you guys. I can't hold your hand on this one. Avocados, growing them in Arizona, you know, you're growing them out of their natural habitat. So it's going to be a little bit of trial and error. The best advice I can give you is try to read the leaves in the summer. If the leaves are wilting, drooping, hanging down, it probably means you're not giving it enough water. All right. If it's in the winter and they're hanging down, it's probably because you're giving it too much. So my best advice would be water it, monitor the leaves. If they're drooping, you got an issue. If your leaf tips are starting to die back, turn brown, that could also be due to prolonged over or under watering. So that's going to be a secondary symptom to the leaf droop. Your best bet is going to be just to monitor it. If you mulch it, like I say, after you water it, you can wait a day or two and you could pull back that mulch and see how moist it is. And that's probably what you're going to want to maintain it at, is somewhere around there. So in the summer, you may be watering every 2-3 days. In the winter, you might be watering it maybe once a month. But it's going to be trial and error. These things are not beginner plants. If you're new to tropicals, it's going to take some commitment some discipline and a whole lot of dedication. So I hope you guys are ready for it. And I'm going to leave it at that for the watering. I'm going to include a copy of my plant grow guide in the description. It's a PDF free to download. You guys can download it. You can share it with your friends. It's got my contact information at the bottom. I'm only on YouTube. I'm not on any other social media. So this is the only place you're going to find me, guys. So guys, I hope that cleared up some questions you may have had about growing avocados here in the desert. Like I said, you don't have to get any special variety. I know people push these R-Viper avocados, and, you know, you don't have to. I'd recommend seed grown. You know, do a couple. You can't go wrong. You know, a seed grown plant versus a grafted or a cutting or something like that. It grows up in this environment. They're just better adapted to this environment. Well, I hope that got you excited about growing avocados. You can't fail if you don't try. So give it a try, guys. Post down in the comments, maybe in a year or something, what kind of success you guys had, and if my advice helped you out, or if you tried something different and it worked better. I'd love to hear it. Please don't forget to like, subscribe, share, hit the bell, tell all your friends. And until the next video, guys, keep growing.